Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to How to Exit Podcast. Today I'm here with Nathan Hirsch, and we are going to talk about all things growth, acquisition, exiting businesses. Man, this guy has got the skill set and the history. Looks like a young man, but he's got a lot of experience behind him. And I'm looking forward to this story. We were chatting a little bit already, Nathan. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored that you invited me on, and I'm sure we can have a good conversation. You have a lot more experience exiting companies than I do, but I've gone through one.
I've got a couple, but the funny thing is I was doing them wrong, so I went and got trained on it, and that's kind of how I got this podcast started up. Is like there's actually a whole world of this stuff that I didn't even know existed until I started interviewing people that have been there, done that, and there's just a million ways to do deals and twice 2 million ways to exit them. So, and I've done most of the ones I've done wrong. So let's start with the origin story. We always have the running joke. Hey, you were born, now you ended up on a show about mergers and acquisitions. How the hell did you end up here? So give us kind of the background of who you are and how you ended up where you're at.
Yeah, so I grew up in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. My parents were both teachers, and I grew up with a middle class life. I mean, my parents were both loving and supportive, and I had food on the table. And all my friends, their parents were doctors, lawyers, dentists, entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever. And so I always grew up feeling like I wanted more. They always had the latest video games, big houses, and so I think that was part of the drive. But my parents also made me just get a job anytime I wanted something. So if I wanted to buy a video game or eventually buy a car, they weren't going to pay for it. I had to get a job as an umpire in my town or work at Firestone or a rent-a-center type place called Aaron. So I was always working since I was a young kid. And I think that helped me just develop sales skills and customer service skills and managing people and just being able to see what life was like after college. And even though I gained these skills, I really looked at it as a glimpse beyond college, and I wanted no part of that. I hated having a boss. I hated driving to work. I had friends who would spend all summer doing fun things, and I was there working and getting a paycheck. So when I got to college, I kind of looked at college as 4 years to either start my own business or get a real job when I was done. My parents made it very clear that I couldn't move back in with them afterwards. So I had to figure it out. And so I started hustling when I was in college. I competed with my school bookstore, created a little referral program for this textbook business, and I was selling these books on Amazon. This was 2008, 2009. No one really knew what Amazon was. It was kind of just a place that people would buy their books here and there. And I got a cease and desist letter from my college telling me to knock it off and stop competing with them. So that was my first glimpse into being an entrepreneur and probably one of the best things that happened to me. I have this Amazon account. I started experimenting and trying other products, came across baby products and toys, and created this dropshipping business that exploded. It was just great timing. Amazon was getting bigger and more well known. Amazon selling wasn't a thing. There weren't courses and influencers and stuff like that. None of that existed. So I had to be one of the first 1,000 like real Amazon sellers out there. And I met my business partner in college. We sold 25 million on Amazon over a 6, 7 year period. And we really struggled to hire. College kids were super unreliable. That's how I got into the VA, the freelancer space, and hired a lot of great people to grow this Amazon business. And when Amazon started to become harder and more competition and there was more sellers, we started offering these VAs and freelancers to other sellers. And that became FreeUp, my next venture, which was fun. It was my first B2B business. I had to learn marketing, and Connor learned websites and SEO, and we had clients for the first time instead of doing B2C. So that was fun. And I'm sure we'll dive into it. That's the business we scaled from a $5,000 investment to doing $12 million a year and exited it in 2019. And now I run a bunch of B2B companies like you. I'm growing a portfolio of different businesses. We have Accounts Balance, my bookkeeping business, Outsource School that teaches people how to hire, Trio SEO, our SEO business, and we're growing a media company around our personal brands to promote those businesses. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, the short, long version, and happy to dive into whatever you want.
How long has Outsource School been around?
So the real story behind that is we sold FreeUp in November 2019. So our plan was to take a year, 2 years off, travel the world. Instead, COVID hit and we were stuck inside with nothing to do. And we had no business ideas. All we had done for 4 years was think about FreeUp. And a buddy of mine reached out and said, "Hey, what if you taught people your hiring process, gave people your SOPs?" And we created Outsource School around like May of 2020. So it's been a few years now and still going strong.
So I think one of our business partners might have been one of your students there. The reason I say that is they always bring in stuff like, material and stuff. And I asked them where they got it. And they said, well, they went online and bought a course on how to outsource. Funny thing is the VA I have now that she's listening when she edits this thing. I love her to pieces. But the way I hired her was a different way. I have a good friend, somebody like you, who that's all they do is VAs, right? I called him up and I said, "Hey, his name's Scott." I said, "Hey, Scott, are you about to hire any VAs anytime soon?" He has VAs run everything. He goes, "Yeah, I'm going through a bunch right now." I'm like, "Cool, give me the number 2 pick, the person you like." His VAs are rock stars. I've worked beside him. They've done work for me before. I said, "Give me the one you almost hire." So I'll give you the 3 or 4 that hit the top 5. So I picked one of those and I interviewed all 4 of them. And then I picked one of those and she's been with me nonstop for 2.5, 3 years now. So I don't know
Nice.
any.
Yeah, I love it. Referrals are great. I would argue you still need to learn how to like manage them and retain them and all that, but referrals are a great way to get good people. When you get to a point like me where you just have a big network in the Philippines, I mean, referrals is always the first place I go.
Right. I don't know if you're a competitor or not, but I use that onlinejobs.ph to farm like short-term gigs. So probably in the next month or so, I'll actually hire another one. So I'm gonna hire a growth manager. Fancy word for a social media manager.
The founder of that, John Jonas, I
Yeah.
met him a few times. I've done a podcast with him. Great, great guy.
Yeah.
We were competitors back in the day. Like I told you before this, we have a non-compete with FreeUp. I don't know if we'll ever get back in the space or not, but
Yeah.
it's a great space. We love the VA space.
Cool. So let's talk about like you've got some stuff out there on growth and hiring, selecting the right person and stuff. Let's focus a little bit on that. Let's focus on what did it take to take free up from $5,000 to $12 million, and then afterwards we'll definitely get into what did the exit look like for you. But what were the lessons learned that you now apply and help other people do growth strategies through that? Because that's pretty rapid growth.
Yeah, so we have this organic marketing blueprint that we do on all of our companies. You can actually grab it if you go to
Mhm.
outsourceschool.com/organic marketing.
Mhm.
And it comes down to going on podcasts like this. It's a great way to get in front of thousands of people, network, good for backlinks, good for SEO, putting out really high quality content. My business partner is an SEO guru. It's why we launched an SEO company. So whenever we start a business from day one, we launch a blog and we're putting out high quality content that has a real keyword strategy behind it. Social media is a big part of it. For anyone that follows me on social media, Nathan Hirsch, I'm always putting out good content and I have a social media team. Number 4 is partnerships. That's one of what I think is underrated. We create partner directories for all of our businesses. If you go to accountsbalance.com/partners, you can check out an example. But essentially with FreeUp, we said, hey, we provide e-commerce VAs. That by year 3 or 4, we provided like non-e-commerce VAs, but to start, it was e-commerce VAs. So we went to every other e-commerce service provider that did not provide VA, every software company, every e-commerce lawyer, every e-commerce brand protection person. We said, we provide VAs, you don't, you provide something we don't, let's cross promote each other. Let's do a guest blog post on each site. Let's blast each other in our newsletter. Let's do a YouTube video together, a podcast together. Back when I would go to conferences, I'm retired from conferences now, we would sponsor VIP events with other people. So constantly just getting in front of other people's lists and vice versa and building authority in that space. Number 5 is affiliates. We create really good affiliate programs for all our companies. So FreeUp, it was 50 cents for every hour we would build to someone forever on both sides. So freelancers would refer other people, clients would refer other people. We do the same thing with our bookkeeping businesses. If you refer anyone to us, you get $50 a month reoccurring for as long as they're a client. So And then we use that to do number six, which is influencers. We would find someone with a gigantic e-commerce Facebook group, someone with a big following on Instagram of e-commerce people, and we'd offer them our affiliate program plus something. If it was $50 a month, we'd offer them $100 a month. So we would find those influencers to promote us. So each of these kind of goes into each other. You might make a partnership that also has a podcast. You might find an influencer that also has a blog to do some SEO stuff. But that's really the organic marketing blueprint that we do for all our companies. And anything you do in paid ads is only going to be complemented by that blueprint.
It's funny is the mergers and acquisitions world is just waking up to that, the whole influencer partnering. If you look at like Ryan Reynolds and some of these other guys who have made hundreds of millions, if not close to over $1 billion already, is exactly what that was, right? Mint Mobile, Ryan Reynolds partnered with them, put his name and brand on it, took some equity in it, became part owner of it, took it all the way through an exit. I think he's got a tequila brand the same way. So it's an advanced version of your affiliate plus some, but it's an equity play. But I think it's going to come down to the lower level influencers quite quickly because it's very lucrative model. You find somebody, if you're a company out there, you've got a product and you find an influencer that product truly appeals to, they've already got the know, like, and trust, which is a key element of getting business done.
Yeah, and you don't even have to go after like the Ryan Reynolds of the world. Some of our best influencers, they've got a small, tight knit community that
Mhm.
listens to everything they say. So, Ben Cummings in the e-commerce space, I think he's retired now, but he had a small community. And the turning point of FreeUp was when he promoted us to his community. And he told me, it's like, you're going to get a lot of people. I need to make sure you can handle them and treat them well. And for 2 weeks after he promoted us, I was just doing sales calls nonstop, and I made sure every single client was taken care of. So sometimes those smaller communities are even better. They're a little bit more tight knit. They have a little bit more influence over them, and they can be great as well. Same thing with podcasts. You never know. Sometimes you go on a big podcast and it flops, or you go on a small podcast and it's your ideal target market, and that takes off.
Let's go back to like growth strategies and you got the organic marketing. Surely you staffed up. You didn't staff up like a lot of guys do. They go find all their college buddies locally. You got really smart pretty quickly and found highly competent people in the VA space. And I'm assuming all over the world, primarily probably the Philippines. And lately everybody's been telling me about Egypt. So I don't know if I haven't tried one of anybody over there yet, but everybody's claiming I have to try that out. What was the I know for me, it was money. Like, when I was when I was trying to get the, online dating site running, I had a staff of 27 people at one point putting money into that, writing all the software, doing everything, and probably 90% of them were in India. But, what led you to go overseas for your employees?
So when we were in college, we hired a lot of college kids, and they ended up they were drinking on the job, smoking weed on the job. We were banging on their dorms to try to get them to wake up and actually work their shift. And we finally and at the time we were 20, so hiring like a 40-year-old in the US was very intimidating to us. So a buddy of mine introduced me to my first VA in the Philippines, and that was a game changer. Now, it wasn't all smooth sailing. We had plenty of disappearing VAs and all the horror stories. In fact, if you go to outsourceschool.com/mistakes, you can see all the mistakes that we made throughout the years. And it took us years to build this really good hiring process that we now use in all our companies, that we teach and give you an outsource school. But that was really it. I mean, we gave up hiring college kids. They were super unreliable. VAs seemed like a great solution. It fit our remote business lifestyle, and we never looked back. I mean, the cool thing about FreeUp is, yeah, we got it to 12 million and we sold it, but we had no office. We had no US employees. There were thousands of VAs and freelance on the platform, but my internal team was 30 VAs in the Philippines doing everything from sales calls to customer service, bookkeeping, marketing, like you name it. They were running every single part of the company. And even now, we push the limits on what virtual assistants can do. I have a VA that goes on podcasts for me, that'll guest on podcasts. Like, we really try to just experiment, and not that everything works, just like in entrepreneurship, things fail, but like we have an all-star VA team in all of our businesses. We hire really great operators, and our companies are 99% VAs right now, just depending on how you determine VAs. Like our bookkeeping business, we have bookkeepers in the Philippines, we have a controller in the US. I wouldn't call them VAs, like a lot of them are CPA equivalents, but we essentially outsource all parts of our business, and it's something that we believe in.
Yeah, I don't consider Mariel my I don't consider her a VA anymore because she's just one of my people, right? Like a virtual
Right.
assistant or, something like that. The VA term is used quite once I think once somebody's been with you for more than a year, it's like, is it really a VA or you just hired you've got somebody really good, you're gonna keep them on. All right. I
Right.
don't yeah, it's virtual. I see, I've never shaken her hand or I've never seen her in person. We rarely even do a Zoom call where we're face to face. We just chat on Slack. She gets everything done, and once a quarter or so, we'll have an actual call. It's not as often as it was in the beginning. What's your selection? I'm gonna dive through your material. I know it's in the material too, but for the listeners here, what's the selection process look like? How important is it to do things like deep job descriptions, or is it more getting on a Zoom call and filling people out?
Yeah, definitely job descriptions. I mean, we break down hiring into 4 parts. You got interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing. So for interviewing, we call it our care interview process:
Mhm.
communication, attitude, red flags, and experience. And so what a lot of people do is they just interview for skill. Skill's part of the equation. We want someone who can communicate at a high level and has a great attitude. And we want the trifecta of all three. And when we're interviewing someone, we're not looking for the right answers. We're looking for the red flag. What is this person telling me that shows they don't have a good attitude, they can't communicate at a high level, or they don't have the skills that we need? And not to go through everything, but for onboarding, which is equally as important, this is where most entrepreneurs mess up. We have our SICK method, SICC, which stands for schedule, issues, communication, and culture. And we go through again all the common issues that people have with VAs: a schedule that doesn't work for them, power issues, internet issues, personal issues, communication, how our company communicates compared to past people, what the culture's like, so there's no surprises when they get in there. And we give them a chance to back out because we don't want them to work for us. We don't want to invest time, energy, and money training them if if it's not going to be a good fit. So that interview process and onboarding process alone, in my opinion, makes Outsource School worth it, because all those VA horror stories you hear, it gets prevented in that upfront part. Now you still have to manage them and treat them well and keep them around and run effective meetings and fire people correctly and all of that. But the interviewing and onboarding is so important. And you'll see entrepreneurs all the time who they might have great ideas, they might be good at doing things themselves, but they just can't scale because they're bad at hiring. And vice versa, you can find a very average entrepreneur, but if they're really good at hiring, that's going to make up for a lot of things they're bad at, and that's going to accelerate their business way past that person they can't hire. So I believe hiring is a skill that you can learn, and it's one of the first things you have to learn as an entrepreneur, and it just makes everything else easier.
Yeah, I did it totally wrong on the online dating side. One of the things I did is I hired for skill right off the bat, like if you had the programming skill and stuff like that. But I was quick to hire and very often quicker to let them go. So it was very expensive training because I would hire them, get them trained up. They have to get familiar with the code and where we're at in the project. You assign projects to them, and you just realize they either couldn't deliver or they had integrity issues. Right. One of the big things I had with my India, and this is just for my people back in the day. I'm sure it's changed by now, but they would say that, yeah, they're working and they're pulling in 40 hours a week, but they were not, right? An average programmer can write more than 100 lines of code in a 40-hour week. So, and I actually didn't know, but I actually had software tools that our tools would tell me who was checked in and checked out and how much I got reports on who checked. It was, what software looks like. I got reports on who checked what in and how many lines it was and stuff. So I had employees that were saying, like, oh, yeah, I worked 45 hours this week. Like, you checked in 25 lines of code. What did you do? Like, I can write that.
We've had all that.
Yeah.
We had a pair of twins that we had twins that we hired, and it turns out they were just, one of them was working and they were billing us twice. So we've had every VA horror story that you can imagine, and you learn from them, and you have to approach it as, hey, how do I put a system in place so that this never happens again? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I like about Outsource School, is it just, you skip the learning curve. Instead of spending years making the mistakes, it just, here's how you avoid them up front. And I wish I had that back when I was 2021 and I had no idea what I was doing hire wise.
I definitely agree with that. I had the same problem with I developed some thick skin over it. We actually would have 2 of the girls in the office for me would send me messages going, "Hey, so and so's working 2 jobs." Well, one of the 2 guys, she did that 2 or 3 times. One of the guys I let go because he just wasn't getting much done, and I found out he's working 2 or 3 jobs. One of the other guys got 4 times the work anybody got done, and I don't care if he's working 4 jobs.
Right.
He was proficient in what he was doing for me. I give him a project, it would take him a third of the time of anybody else on my staff I gave the project to. So if you can do that and still pull a second or third job, God bless you. Right? So, and I had the same in the real world. I was in the IT management space. I had an employee who had moved away, and the same thing. One of my employees came to me and said, "Hey, I think he's, working 2 40-hour-a-week jobs. How's he allowed to do that?" I was like, "The day you can outpace him and get stuff done faster than him is the day I say a word to the guy." To this day, he's probably still one of the smartest computer techs I've ever seen. You give him a ticket, it's done. You give him something you estimate this is gonna take him a week to finish, he does it in 2 days. So if he's got a second job and he's pulling that off, I don't care. I haven't found anybody else that, I could bring in to at his rate that we could do it any better. So, do you run into that where you kinda know they're doing other stuff, but they're just so proficient you don't care?
Honestly, our mentality is we like to hire people full-time and exclusive, and that's one of the questions we ask them. I mean, they're sure, we have, like, graphic designers and stuff that are part-time, but for, like, a bookkeeper, we don't want them to have other clients. Even if they can get it done, it burns them out, and then you're always run that risk that the other client wants to hire them exclusive, offers them more money, stuff like that, and
Mhm.
we don't wanna get into that. So from our side, we, for the most part, only hire people if they're full-time and exclusive to us, and it doesn't really happen. I can't remember the last time it happened, but if we did find out that they lied to us and had another job, that would be it. I mean, we take honesty and integrity very good, but we're upfront and honest with people. If someone wants to be a freelancer and they want to have 4 different jobs, we're just upfront and honest that that's not what we're looking for, and there's plenty of other opportunities for it.
It's interesting 'cause, as I say, everybody that signed up on our for that particular project, it was supposed to be exclusive, right? There was stuff that they were doing for us that, the other thing is I ran into some cultural stuff that because it was a dating site, it was everything was, guys could date guys, girls could date girls, and some of the belief systems there, we can't write code for that." I was like, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't exclude that, right? This is a dating site, anybody can date anybody they want." So long as it's human, they can post a picture of it and say that's what they're looking for. Let's go to, kind of you already talked about growth, you talked about the process there. What what made you exit? Was it an offer you couldn't refuse, or what led up to you actually selling, FreeUp?
Yeah, so we at the beginning of 2019, we didn't go into the year thinking, "Hey, we're gonna exit this thing by the end of the year." One of our clients reached out to us. They said, "Hey, we like FreeUp. We use FreeUp. We don't start businesses, we buy them. And would you be interested in being acquired?" And we had a conversation with them, and they ended up making us an offer that was life-changing money and all that. But there were other factors that went through our head. I mean, we were coming off an Amazon business where at the beginning we thought we were going to take down Amazon and be the next e-commerce giant. And by the end, it was really hard to run the business. And so things changed. Even though we weren't dependent on Amazon anymore, we knew that things can change very quickly. So we had a bitter taste from that business where we had to lay some people off. And we wanted this to be more of a success story. Obviously, life changing money. The economy was at an all time high. This was pre COVID. So in our mind, we're thinking, hey, this might be a good time to sell it before the economy changes. We also know that, or we knew at the time that you want to sell your business when you don't have. We were incredibly profitable. We were having 100K plus profitable months, very lean, no debt, cash flow positive, no whatever. So it was a good business, but we had gotten this to $12 million a year. Would we have been able to get it to 25 million without making serious investments? And we could end up in a position where the business has more revenue, but is making less money, or the margins go down. And we grew it from 1 million, 5 million, 9 million, 12 million. So we were growing, but we weren't growing as fast as we were in year one. And we didn't want to plateau and then try to sell it, or get burnt out and then try to sell it. That would have made it harder to sell. So there were lots of factors there. We wanted to take care of our team. We took $500,000 from the sale and gave it to our team in the Philippines. And we thought of it something like, hey, we get to take chips off the table, put money in our pocket. The rest of our life can be a lot less stressful business wise, and be able to start different businesses and not have all our eggs in one basket, and build more of a diversified portfolio. So we kind of looked at it as, hey, we're going to make the best decision possible with the information we had, and no looking back. We wanted to vet the buyers, make sure that they were good and they would honor the agreements. And yeah, we also knew during the due diligence, we could talk about the deal can fall through at any minute. So we had to stay focused on growing the business, and we were comfortable. Hey, if the deal did fall through, we still love FreeUp. We're still making money. We still can grow it. But if the deal does go through, we can't look back and say, hey, we should have done something differently. We made the best decision that we possibly could with the information that we had.
That was extremely insightful. So most people don't do what you did. Most people either ride it until until the plateaus. They don't want to sell it now. It's the best it's ever been, or they take the foot off the gas because they're in the middle of the sales process. And to be honest, it's distracting. You got due diligence stuff, you got homework, you got other stuff that's not normal to your day to day operations. So you end up getting distracted and taking the foot off the gas, and then it starts to level off. And then there's the retrading that happens because it leveled off and it wasn't what the original LOI agreed upon. I'm impressed with your logic and the thought process you went through. The fact that it's like selling your favorite car, right? You just had it detailed, and you're like, "I'm gonna sell it and get something better," and you're like, you're driving around like, "Hey, if the guy doesn't buy this thing for what I want, I'm gonna continue driving it," right? So, there's something to be said about the prep work for selling too, because there's some of the stuff you would do to get the best price that just made it run better. Some of the systems and operating procedures, it seems like you're already keen to put in place. You would be shoring those up and doing other stuff to get your best sales price, so
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got great advice along the way, and
mm,
we just treated it. My overall mentality on business, and this sounds bad, is just like most businesses fail, like one or another. Like even Amazon at some point will probably fail. Businesses just don't last forever, and so if you look at that mentality when you're starting businesses, investing in businesses, when you have that opportunity to sell, like failure is a real option, and so that kind of helps it as well. And we're super fortunate. We sold it to really great people. They honored their word. FreeUp's still running today. It's approaching 10 years. Most companies don't last that long. And they paid us every penny. Our team is still there. We're still in contact with them. So it couldn't have worked out better. Now, in real time at the time, we're crossing our fingers, even though we sign on the dotted line and get the upfront money and hoping they don't burn the thing into the ground and hurt our reputation and all of that. But super fortunate how it all worked out. And I've heard plenty of horror stories where it didn't work out that way.
yeah, I did an article once where I kinda did the research, like, okay, how many companies have been past, say, 100 years? And it was quite a few. And then in 200 years, it was quite, significantly less. And I think once you hit, I think it was 700 years, there's only 2 companies that ever survived longer than 700 years. So eventually everything either gets bought, sold, or and one of them just sold. Longest one of the oldest companies on the planet was a company that built temples, and it was in the same family for, I think it was, I don't remember the number, 900, 1,200 years or so, and then they finally hit financial difficulties and had to sell to a competitor. So, eventually they all sell, or get shut down or fail for some reason, right? So, have you looked at doing, acquisitions or, like, to grow through acquisition?
We did. Right when we sold it, we spent a lot of time like researching and talking to people. And this was during COVID. So
Mm,
it was kind of a crazy, scary time to do your first acquisitions, whether that's right or wrong, and not using that as an excuse. But I don't know if you remember, but like prices were at an all-time high. Commerce businesses were getting crazy multiples. A lot of the aggregators that bought a lot of e-commerce businesses during that time all went bankrupt. So I'm kind of happy that we didn't do that. It's probably something that we should do. I think every time I start a business in my mind, I'm like, this is the last one. I'm never starting another business again. I'm only going to acquire, but we come up with these ideas. And I think one of our skill sets, at least it seemed, is like just starting businesses with small amounts of money, hiring an operator from day one and hitting the ground running and being able to market it. So it's definitely something you want to do. I mean, I invest in a lot of like public companies and have a good stock portfolio and all of that, but yeah, I don't know. It's on my radar, but by the time like that we felt like the market actually corrected itself, we had already started EcomBalance and Outsource School, and we were kind of into the weeds on our own.
I looked at a few companies, here recently where there's no reason whatsoever where 100% of their employees are US based, and they're getting killed on salaries. A good one was a podcast guesting service, right? I looked at a podcast guesting service. She had 32 employees doing multi-million dollars worth of revenue a year. All of our employees are US based, and all of them are doing tasks that I could easily, and they're all making between, say, 40 and $70,000 each times 30. And I could replace every single one of them with decent VAs in other countries for a fraction of that and get more people doing the work and get better work done. When I asked them about it, they thought, "Well, it's language barrier." And I was like, "That's not true, because My VA probably speaks better. I'm from Oklahoma. I have a bad accent. Occasionally, I slur some words. My VA speaks better English than I do. And most of the ones I've worked with, they speak better English than most of us do. I think that's a fallacy that most people have.
Yeah, I mean, even if you want to keep you as people, I would argue give each of them a VA
That's
and
what
figure out what tasks are they doing that is not worth $70,000 a year and have them focus on $70,000 a year tasks. So, and it's not like you need to fire everyone or replace it with VAs, but the VAs can get those US employees focused on the higher level tasks.
It's funny when you said that's exactly what we were gonna do. We were gonna start that way. Every single employee gets their own VA. Some of them will get 2 because some of the people are actually that she had were needing to work 50, 60 hours to get their work done. So some of them would get 2, depending on it would have been so much more efficient to because that was their limiting to growth, is bringing people in, training them. They thought they could grow more if they had more employees, and it's just hard to find the right people here. And I was like, why aren't you looking other places, right? So that said, with your skill set, like another reason is I didn't grab it. For them, what I didn't reason I didn't acquire that one is they've made management shifts in their business, so they were in a declining business. The revenue had dropped and stuff, mainly because of the way they were managing things, and they hadn't passed that curve after making all those big changes and getting comfortable with it and moving back up. So there was recovery in sight of that, but they're in a market that was becoming more and more competitive. There's very little to any barrier to entry to putting people on podcasts as a guest hosting service, right? Even though they were one of the first ones, anybody can hire a team of VAs and kick that off and have it going pretty good pretty quickly. So there's just more and more competitors on that space. But the reason I brought that subject up is there are a ton of companies out there, especially in your accounting business and other stuff, that would be excellent. They're profitable now. And if you applied your skill set to them and not even just replace employees, but augment the employee staff with VAs and that you go through your system and train, that profit margin would definitely increase, right? You could buy a company that's accounting companies do well. They 10, 15, 20% profit margin is not unheard of. I'm probably being generous. You can probably do way better than that. That said, you know, start augmenting them with the, VAs and that number really shifts.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely opportunity. It's on my to-do list. I should add, I recently became a dad. I have an 8-month old. So yeah, right. I don't know. I don't really have a response to that. It's definitely a good thing that I want to do at some point.
Being an entrepreneur and being especially somebody like you who can easily delegate something, you have a skill set that a lot of people don't. A lot of people build something, they try to do everything themselves. It seems like you have the skill set is as fast as you can delegate something off, you know who you can hire and hire people in to do the right work. That's a mindset that a lot of entrepreneurs could really use.
Yeah, I mean, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at strategic stuff. I'm good at hiring. I'm good at some marketing stuff, but like I'm not trying to learn how to code. I'm not trying to write really good articles. Like there's so much that I just don't want to do. And I think like I'm not a bookkeeper. So opening up a bookkeeping service forces you to get out of that. Like I couldn't do bookkeeping if I wanted to. So we have to hire a good operator. We have to trust her. We have to hire bookkeepers around her and have them put systems in place. So I like doing stuff like that that forces me to get out of my comfort zone and gets me to back off and let the smart people do their thing.
I tried once, and I might do this again at some point, to get the best employee. Have you ever done the little contest thing where you bring on like for this growth manager I have, instead of bringing on one person, I bring on 8 or 10 people for a month, and I make a contest out of it and say, here's your goal, here's your content, here's what I want you to write on, here's my social media accounts, here's how you track, your scorecard, and the top 2 people at the end of the month, I'm bringing on full time. But do you ever put anything like that where you put contests out to find like very skilled labor, or is it just you're so good at interviewing you can actually identify that skill set?
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. We definitely have done that in the past. It's not a terrible approach. I think we're very confident in our hiring process that we believe that normally it's going to produce the best person, but like there's no wrong way to do that. Like that's worked. I know other entrepreneurs that do it and it's a viable strategy.
Just curious, I'm looking for what's the best way to find somebody that just really like from my growth manager, they're gonna have to love social media because the channels change constantly. what you can do this week on LinkedIn or TikTok or one of those changes. I'll give you an example. You get knocked out of the algorithm if you put a link inside of your comments or not your comments, but your post for a lot of these algorithms, right? Used to, you could put that link in the first comment. Now the algorithm looks at that and it'll knock you out of their algorithm if you do it right away. So you have to kind of wait an hour and come back and put it in there. But there's all these weird quirks on how to get the most social media bang for the buck. And somebody has to love that stuff, eat it, live it, sleep it. So how would you go about finding somebody who not only
That's what we're building right now. We're building a media company, and I'm okay at social media. I think I have a decent following. People read my content, but I'm by no means like an Instagram expert. I don't know all the little hacks. And right now, that's what we're interviewing for. We're looking for someone who can take that over, that can crush YouTube SEO and all these different things. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. We definitely spend more time on those roles where we're not an expert in. They could hire a bookkeeper, hire a developer, stuff like that. But we're not afraid to fail. Like, sure, really worst case scenario, they get my account banned or something. But like real worst case scenario, they just don't perform, and we just hire someone else, and we probably learn a lot from that experience. And
you know,
going through that first hire helps us with that second hire.
what I'm trying on this, and this is probably what you do too, is when I ask them to tell me how the TikTok algorithm works or how the Instagram algorithm works, like how are you going to get the best thing? When they tell me what they know, I want to hear a sense of enthusiasm in their voice, right? Like they figured out something that somebody else does. There's got to be a sense of curiosity or enthusiasm. I don't know what the word. There's got to be a spark because it can be very frustrating. And you got two different types of people that do this stuff. The people that just love the fact that it's constantly changing and it's a challenge for them, right? They're kind of the chess master of social media. They kind of know the strategy is going to change on them, and they're ready to play the game. The other thing I look for is people who are really into gaming because it's the same thing. There's cheat codes for this. I've found that avid gamers are really good at beating online strategies and algorithms and stuff like that in a white hat method, nothing gray hat or black hat. Do you have any propensity to certain types of people you're looking for?
Yeah, we like entrepreneur mindset people, like people who have either started business in the past or want to start businesses, but usually they hate one part of it. Like our operator for our bookkeeping business ran her own bookkeeping business, loves building, loves systems, has an entrepreneur mindset, but she doesn't want to do sales. She doesn't want to do marketing. There's just things she doesn't want to do. And ideally, those are things that we like doing and we're good at. We'll do sales and marketing all day. So
Right.
that's really what we look for. And then the old phrase, like we have to be able to get a beer with them. Like we have to like them as people. If we're going to be working with them, they have to have the same values as us, the same beliefs in customer service and treating people well. And like when you mess up, you just own up to it and make it right. I think one of the reasons that I've just gained a reputation throughout the years is like FreeUp. We had a lot of happy clients, but not every situation was perfect. Like there were freelancers that messed up, VAs that messed up, and we just went to the client and said, how do we make this right? Do you want credit to another VA? Do you want a refund? Like, what can we do to just make this whole with you? And even if you're not going to use us again, we just want to leave on good terms. A lot of times those turned into our best clients because they wanted to stay with us. They knew we'd always make it right. And we want people with that same mentality. We don't want people who argue over an invoice or take things personally. And that's just not our mentality on business. It's not our mentality on life. And we don't want to work with people where it's not aligned. So to us, that's really important as well.
Awesome. I've noticed that for my Philippine VAs, one of the things I have to very clearly make sure they understand of is I have no intentions on being an asshole, but I come across this one as quite often in email and stuff. I'm extremely to the point, right? Somebody asks me questions, and I'm like I said before we started, I'm sitting there staring at four monitors. I usually got five or six things going on. So if somebody says, "Hey, did so and so on there?" I just say yes, or like, oh, then their gears start turning because I don't give them a warm fuzzy answer. Right, I'm hyper logical, so I have to prep all my Philippine VAs, and they're more than others because a lot of times if I say something offensive or I say something that seems to be mean, they'll just clam up, right? Meryl's really good about it now. She knows I might be slightly on the spectrum because I just don't know how to interact with people in a normal way. But do you the culture fit, like you have to explain people how you operate and how the culture is, and like do you find that with all your VAs too is like, look, this is how I guess you already said you do a communication plan, but, I'm really cautious of that because I've had VAs before that, like, they worked for a couple of weeks and then they quit because they thought I was mad, and I wasn't mad, I just answered they asked me a question that could be answered yes or no, and I said no and went back to work. I'm like, "Why did they quit?" I'm like, "Well, I get a hold of them a month later because they ghost me, and And they were like, "Well, I thought you were super mad. I asked you if I could do this and you said no." And like, you asked a yes or no question. I gave you an answer. Like, I didn't realize you needed a justification for the answer. So let's jump into like you're managing multiple businesses right now, right? You've got 2 or 3 currently.
4 if you yeah.
So for are you acting because that's what acquisition entrepreneurs do a lot of times. We'll buy multiple companies, but that's because we got great teams in place. You buy something, you get the team solidified. You may not give somebody a CEO title. Sometimes the top guy is kind of a general manager, but sometimes there's a CEO in place. And then the whole goal of the game for a lot of us in this space is you're more of the chairman of the board than you are like the CEO and daily operator. Sounds like you have that mindset already, you're kinda acting as the chairman of the board, you're on the board, you've got these multiple things going, but do you still roll up the sleeves and get in and do sales for all 4 of them, or what does your day-to-day look like? How do you manage 4 companies?
Yeah, we bring in we don't start a company unless we have an operator in place. So like we had the SEO idea 6 months, a year before we found that right person. Same thing with bookkeeping. So we have the operator from day one. We're out of fulfillment. I'll do sales and marketing all day. We've got other people that can do it too, but all our businesses, we only do one thing. Like monthly bookkeeping, we charge on the first, books by the 15th each month, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. We have no other add-on services. We don't do consulting. We don't do expedited books. We don't do payroll. So sales calls are pretty straightforward and pretty easy, and I don't mind doing them. But I have other people that can do them as well. And then marketing, we kind of have an economies of skill thing going where we have one marketing team that does it for all the different companies. So that's kind of like my normal day is get on, focus on whatever the most important thing. I should say my normal day is hanging out with my 8-month-old for 2 hours. Then my nanny comes. Then whatever the most important thing is for those 2 days. Like right now, I'm working on a social media revamp. So I was working on that this morning. Then I usually have any like meetings with the operators, podcasts right after that. Hence it's like 10 a.m. my time. So that kind of fits there. And then right after this, I do a 1 hour intense HIIT workout in my custom gym downstairs. That's part of my lifestyle. And then the afternoon, I'm usually either doing some kind of outreach or wrapping up projects, some kind of social media stuff, any phone calls, any sales calls, any networking calls I have to wrap up the day. So yeah, that's what my normal days looks like. I'm done by 3 and yeah.
So you really got a not quite the 4-hour work week, but you've got it down to where you have a systemized process that I always joke, there's no such thing as passive cash flow or passive income, and there's no such thing as the 4-hour work week as an entrepreneur. You're going to do more, but you can. And I don't think there's any such thing as true, like they call work-life balance. I think it's a fallacy, but ebbs and flows. Right? You're in a stage in your life right now where you can actually gear towards where it feels like you got great work-life balance. And then when it comes down to the wire and you need a 50-hour week, it's not going to hurt you to pull one, right? It's not every week. I'm a big fan of that's what I'm doing now. Like I've had a couple opportunities to get in and be part of something that like if I acquired it, it's gonna take 60, 70 hours a week to do something with. And I just have to pass on those. I'm 52. I'm a little bit older than you, but I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old who I'm still cool to hang around with, right? Daddy's still cool. Like I can take them to the beach and I can run them to wherever we want to run. And it's still okay. I've only got a couple more years of that, right? My son's 13. He's already at the point where he's running around doing games with his buddies and stuff. I maybe have a year left before it's not cool to have dad take you somewhere. So maybe when I'm no longer, cool to be around, I'll pull something that, requires 50, 60-hour weeks again, but I don't think so. And it is possible. You're doing it, and I know a dozen people that are doing it. A lot of people think that it's not possible. There's actually people I've on the show, like, don't buy a company if you can't pull 80-hour week. That's just them.
My mentality is hustle in your 20s, take lots of risks. You can always go out and get a real job. That was my mentality. If Amazon failed, I would just go out and get a real job. And when you have more, like, I had no responsibilities back then. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a house. Like now I have responsibilities. Sure, I can take risks, but they're a little bit more calculated. And I don't know, like I'm lucky enough to have gone through an exit. So for me to make like a little bit more money and sacrifice time is almost never worth it. Maybe opportunities will come up where it is worth it, but you definitely have to change your mentality a little bit.
Yeah. I purposely don't put myself in situations where, like, we don't have a mortgage. I paid cash for the house. Even our prior house we just sold, we paid cash for that one. and they weren't anything substantial that, we had a little farmhouse on 5 acres. We sold that. Now we own a tiny home that we take with us. We bought that. But, this is a portable studio that I'm in. I can take it with me. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot shipping container. I converted to a studio, so my office is portable. I used to rent an office everywhere we landed. A lot of the guys that use all the VAs and stuff, they've adopted the kind of the digital nomad lifestyle because they can go anywhere and be anywhere. It frees them up. You've got that luxury of being able to go anywhere and live anywhere to do your work. What has you chosen to be where you're at now?
I grew up in Massachusetts. I
Yeah.
went to school in Connecticut. I lived in Stamford, Connecticut for a year. Didn't love living in Stamford. And one of our business partners for the Amazon business got into a postgraduate college in Florida. And in our mind, we were like, Florida's cheap. We can probably hire cheap people there. We'll move there. I ended up meeting my girlfriend there. I told you what happened with the Amazon business, but I mean, Florida was a great place business wise to grow and sell a company, right? Like no state income tax, all of that. But once we exited FreeUp, we didn't have to be in Florida anymore. My business partner moved to Colorado a few years before we sold FreeUp. So I love Colorado. I knew my parents loved the outdoors. My sister loves the outdoors. And I told everyone, I told my partner, if I could convince my wife to move to Colorado, my sister will move here. And if we're both here, my parents will move here too. And that's exactly what happened. So we're all in Colorado. It worked out pretty perfect because my parents get to see my son all the time. Colorado is great. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, great outdoors, great sports. Like it honestly has everything that I want in a place. So I'm happy here. I probably stayed in Florida too long. My girlfriend probably had something to do with it, but super happy with Colorado. And you're right, I can be anywhere, but I mean, my whole family's here now, and I'm fortunate enough where I have a house. I still have a condo in Florida. I don't see us moving anytime soon. Plus, I bought during COVID. So I have like a 2 point. I don't really believe in mortgages either, but I got a 2.5% mortgage. So it's like free money. It's tough to turn that down. But with our condo, just like you, paid cash. And I probably would have always paid cash if mortgage rates weren't just crazy cheap.
Yeah, for me, when the mortgage rates were that cheap, my wife wanted a tiny home, and it just didn't make sense and they wouldn't mortgage all anyway, so it didn't make sense. And I owned a real estate investment firm at the time, so when I say I don't like mortgages, it's because I owned a foreclosure company that basically negotiated foreclosures for people, and I seen what the banks did, right? And I still use banks, but it's always for invest. If I do a mortgage, it's for it's an investment property. It's not something we live in. And mainly it's always because of a girl, right? And when I first started seeing my wife 16, 17 years ago, actually 19 years ago, when we first started dating, we've been married for 16. She was real nervous, like I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to do entrepreneurial things. And I had a 6-figure job. And I told her, I said, "What if we just pay cash for a house and you always have a place to live?" Because that was the biggest concern. What if you lose your job or get sued and we don't have a place to live? We'll be homeless. I was like, "Okay, what if we wrangle up enough cash?" I'm a hell of a negotiator. If I don't negotiate a deal and we buy the house, it's cash. We put it in a trust. I get to live there by the good grace of God. You don't kick me out, right? I can't even take it in divorce. The trust is in your name and your family's name. What if we do that? Would that make you comfortable if I was an entrepreneur? And she's like, "Absolutely." So that's all of our properties. I don't own a single one of the houses we've ever lived in. I just put them in a trust. It's in her family's trust, and I don't have a house problem because, like, I have other properties I can go live in. Just have to ask a renter to move. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about, like, give me the rundown of what each one of the companies does and what a great customer would look like so that everybody listening today can know what that is. So I see accounts balance on your shirt. I guess we can start there and then run through your companies and give me your ideal customer.
Yeah, so I have 2 bookkeeping brands, Accounts Balance and EcomBalance. Accounts Balance is monthly bookkeeping for online businesses, whether you're a SaaS, an agency. We even have like lawyers and real estate agents, etc. Monthly books, charge on the first, books by the 15th, built by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs. Everything we do is just designed to be as fast and easy as possible for you with accurate reports and great customer service. EcomBalance is the same service, but a higher price point for e-commerce businesses, a little bit more complicated bookkeeping. Outsource School, we talked about, you get my exact hiring process you can plug into your business, all of our SOPs, whether they're marketing or operation that you can choose in or you can plug in. You get our Facebook group, live coaching calls once a month. That's our program there. Trio SEO is our new SEO business, pumping out really high quality content for your blog. The same thing we do on all of our other businesses that we now offer for other people. You can go to trioseo.com and get a free audit and see if you're a good fit for that. And then my newest thing, nathanhirsch.com, took me 7 years to get this domain. I finally have it. So feel free to go there. You can grab my newsletter that goes out once a week. I have an exit blueprint that if you go to nathanhirsch.com/exit, that shows you exactly how I build my businesses to be sellable, even if I don't want to sell them, and everything I learned during going through the sale process. So that's what I'm working on now. And hopefully next time we talk, I've got some other ones in the portfolio.
I'll do my best to have my team put that exit a link to that exit in our show notes because that would be a great resource for everybody listening here. Our audiences are always looking to grow things to exit. So the one thing I do want to ask before we go, and we never even covered the topic real quick, is how do you see AI impacting all the stuff that you do? I just seen an AI tool this morning that is it's Y Combinator backed, and they're building AI employees is what they're calling it. And their first one's just outbound sales. It can do outbound sales calls, email, outbound outreach and all kinds of email, work with the CRM, augment the data for your list, do all kinds of stuff. They have 25 million B2B or something like that, 255 million B2B contacts in their database to go from raw. So it's like AI is quickly moving into a lot of our spaces. How do you see, are you guys already using it across the platforms you have or?
Yeah, we use it more on like the back end. Like we won't use it for the writing, but we'll use it during the research stage, for example, for true SEO. I mean, the real answer is I don't know. I can't predict the future. AI is always going to be part of what we do. What we do, we stay on top of it. I'm sure we'll have to make adjustments. Do I think it's just going to put every small business out of business? No, but there'll probably be changes that need to be made, and that's part of what's great about having a diverse portfolio. If hell breaks loose and it does take down the company, you've got others, but our goal is to stay on top of it and make adjustments that are needed. And I think with all the AI stuff, that personal touch and personal approach becomes even more, or I should say, less common and more important. So, yeah, I don't know. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I try to stay away from predicting the future really in anything.
It's funny is, I kinda use it like we talked about earlier, where you augment your US employees with a VA. I've augmented all my VAs with, different AI tools they can use. So, just to make their job easier, I'll find the ones they can use. I'll actually figure out how they can use it, write a standard operating procedure for using it, and we'll switch the tool out. Saves them time, and I still pay them for their 30 to 40 hours a week, but 30 to 40 hours a week, depending on what they want. They have a choice between 30 and 40. That said, it gives them more like, they get more tasks, so I'm sure I'm getting more done now than I was before these tools came out. There's still a lot of room to play in it, but I'm curious, is like some of these like this one that's backed by Y Combinator I just seen this morning, it is about the price of a entry-level VA. It's about $450 a month to get it up and running to be a full-blown thing, but it looks like it could do the job of I would say a low-level VA. I wouldn't put you train somebody really well and you'll smoke this thing. The same way with the AI copyright. An AI can be as good as a copywriter to somebody that's doing five-figure copyright, right? But if you want a really good one, you better have somebody that knows what they're doing, augment it, read it, and at least change it up. There's something missing. There's a good copy actually has kind of have a soul to it in my mind. There's a vibe to it or something when you read it, you know that that's really well done, and AI is missing it as far as I can see. But, where are you guys headed as far as, like, the next couple of years here? Are you just growing these or?
Growing the media company, growing my portfolio of businesses, and trying to be a great dad along the way. It's really my focus.
Well, if somebody wants to, what's the best way that you want somebody to, like, make that initial contact? If they wanna work with you, or maybe they've got a business idea and they're a great operator and they wanna be on your radar for the future, or I don't, for whatever reason, if somebody wants to reach out and contact you directly, what's the path you want them to take?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to contact. Connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform you use. You can go to nathanhirsch.com, join my newsletter, or if you go to any of my websites, it's pretty easy to get a quote or sign up. And yeah, would be honored for you to trust us with your business. We'll take really good care of it, and we really appreciate you having me on.
I will call that a show. Hang out for just a second. I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.